Good evening. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees for the West Idaho School District to order, March 29th at 5:32 in the evening. And our first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand and join me. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any changes or amendments to the agenda?
No.
Great, thank you very much. So this evening, our discussion part of the agenda is going to be our opportunity to have a little dialogue with our 4 finalists for the Zone 2 vacancy. Just as kind of a recap for maybe people that don't know how the process has occurred up to this point, I'll just recap it. Our applicants all filled out an application. That application contained 3 questions, and then we had an additional supplemental questionnaire that had another 8 questions. It also included candidate resumes, so that was the first opportunity that the board had to kind of look at your background and kind of hear your responses to the questions. And then we had the opportunity to hear from you in person a couple weeks ago. And then tonight we get the chance to kind of discuss on a more broad topic. So I'm going to start on my right, and everybody will get a chance to be the first to hear a question. Since there is 6 questions, math was never my strong suit, but that means 2 people are going to have to go first twice. And so just to kind of keep the order, I'll come back to our candidates on the right side here and move through. I know the agenda said that we'll allot 2 minutes for each question, and Troy, I know it set it up. Is it a difficulty to move that to 3?
Just give me a second.
Yeah, that was one of those I meant to mention to you before, so we'll move that. Each person will have 3 minutes to answer each question. And we'll wait for Troy to give me the high sign that... Troy's being very nice right now. He's probably mad at me. And for the candidates, while we're waiting, there's not going to be, we'll ask a question and listen to the response, but there won't be any back and forth. There's not going to be follow-up to your question or your response. It'll just be our opportunity to kind of hear your response to the question. No, you don't have to be sorry. I'm the one that threw the curveball in there. Following the end of our question periods, we will have a work session with Dr. Bubb and the administration, who we're going to talk about a full-day kindergarten and just bring the board up to date on that. And then following that work session, we'll move into our action item on making motions to fill the vacancy. So just kind of know how the order will go tonight. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll start the questions here, and we're going to start to my right with Mr. Rank. And the first question is, what experience do you have working on a board and or in a volunteer capacity?
So, with my experience, I don't have a ton of experience working with a board. In my position at my school at Boise State, I do manage, or I do work with a number of people. I manage our class. I have 6 people that work with me that I do manage them, or not really manage, but I work with them and help manage the classes with them. That's part of my service. At Boise State, we have this service. That is primarily what I do for the service that I do there. So I don't really have a ton of it, like I said, I don't have a ton of experience on the board side. This is kind of my opportunity to get that experience, to learn it. My experience definitely comes from the business side of things, where I've spent a lot of time in business. I've worked at Idaho Public Television at a nonprofit for a lot of years because I enjoyed working with them and working for the people of Idaho and giving back to the community. So that's kind of where my background really comes from, is from that kind of service side, but not exactly from not from like on a board position.
Great, thank you. Okay, continuing with the same question, and I want to make sure I get it right. Is it Mr. Bakleon?
Bakleon.
Bakleon.
Yeah. And however you want to say it is fine. I won't be offended either.
I want to say
Anyway.
I want to say it correctly. Okay, Mr. Bakleon.
Thank you.
Same question, and I'll read it again for you,
Thank you.
if I can find it here. There it goes. What experience do you have working on a board and or in a volunteer capacity?
So working on a board, I have not necessarily like directly on a board, but as a member of administration, certainly, where there has been a group to decide, make educational decisions that we have to work together in order to advance the cause of education, so to speak. I definitely have worked in that capacity as an administrator when I lived in Taiwan. And it's, for me, it was important just to be able to, I mean, there's a lot of opinions that come in from different areas when you're working on a board, and it's important that everybody is heard, validated, and that they're understood. And as far as a volunteer capacity, I have had a lot of volunteer. I do a lot of volunteerism for my church, and also for. I've done a lot of volunteering in Taiwan as well. When I was a teacher out there, I used to volunteer teach often for kids who couldn't afford English lessons, and so sometimes I'd volunteer teach for them, or do from time to time also. There would be lessons that we would have in the community that I would also volunteer for. So I mean, for me, volunteering is an essential part of the community. That's it's really the core, basically trying to give back and to be able to volunteer. My experience has mostly been around those 2 areas, as far as like education, and being a member of an administration, and also for a lot of years in church service. So, in both capacities.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Penny, same question. What experience do you have working on a board and or in a volunteer capacity?
That's a great question. Most recently, it was on my CV as well. I was a commissioner for the City of Boise Ethics Commission. I was appointed by the mayor to serve on that commission. So in that capacity, obviously we're looking at policy, city code, some sensitive topics that come before the commission with regard to ethics of city employees. So probably my most relevant experience in terms of public service on more of a policy body and an appointed body or an elected body. Beyond that, in my capacity at work at St. Luke's, I sit on many committees there, which is a privilege. Committees that, essentially identify priorities for the organization, the benefit for the buck, so to speak, which, we hate to say it, but that's the nature of business and likely the nature of the board as well. There's only so much money to go around, and we have to figure out what to do with that money and where that money is best spent. And so I think that's a great skill to have. It's a critical thinking skill where you can sit down and look at, what's the net benefit versus the net resources that you need, et cetera. And then just as an attorney, I volunteered a lot, pro bono cases on different committees through that work. So, all my experience essentially has led me to the knowledge that, as these gentlemen said, public service is so important to our community, and any experience you have in business, volunteering in the classroom. I volunteer with my kids in the classroom, and just the interactions there, lend itself to being an active member of the board, having something to say. I think that's important, that you have a voice and that you're willing to present your ideas as a board member to each other for consideration. And so I have a lot of experience in those areas through those committees and the Ethics Commission that I spoke about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Halliday. Same question, but I'll repeat it. What experience do you have working on a board and/or in a volunteer capacity?
I've had the opportunity to serve on 3 different boards in my career. The first one I served on was for the Idaho Council on Developmental Disabilities. I was a parent representative for that. On that board, there are representatives from school districts, from state organizations that support individuals with disabilities, and then parent, and I obviously was a parent. And what we did was we worked with legislators to try and influence them to help these individuals who are impacted with disabilities. I enjoyed my time there. My focus on that committee was education. That was my love. And so when I had the opportunity, I took it and I went right into volunteering for the State of Idaho Special Education Advisory Panel. And we met downtown. Charlie Silva is the director of that. She's awesome. This gave me the opportunity to meet with, PhDs who directly influence the outcome of the education of our children in the state of Idaho, not just those with those just with disabilities, but our focus was on teachers. How do we help teachers to be able to work with these children with disabilities? That's just an example. Another thing we did is we would comment on rules and regulations. We were able to do that. We helped develop evaluations and reporting on data that was brought up throughout the state. And we helped develop corrective actions where needed on this board. The third board I served on was for an organization, a nonprofit that I started. I'm the founder of, and that definitely was an incredible experience for me.
Thank you very much. Second question, and this time we'll start with Mr. Baklian. Okay, thank you. And what is a school board trustee's role and responsibility? And the second part to that is, how does this role differ from the role of the superintendent or administration?
I appreciate extending the time to 3 minutes. I'm going to take just another couple seconds to think about
Sure.
that, if that's all right. But yeah, it's a very interesting question. I've actually been pondering about that, about the differing roles between the school board and the superintendent. There's a lot of official things, there's a lot of documents out there that kind of outline, as far as like the state goes, what a school board member should be. To me, one of the things that stands out for me is a school board member should be a representative of the community, really, to me. I think it's important that that they that they get and respond to feedback from the community, especially around the people around them. I mean, when I finally admitted that I was going to pursue the vacancy there in West Ada, I had people that had reached out to me mostly with encouragement, but also asking me about very similar questions. And I think being an advocate for the community and representing what the community wants really is a really important thing. And, you know, there's going to be, just like in any situation, as I said in my previous answer, there will be a variety of different answers, or a variety of different things that people would want to discuss, or things that people that would want to be done. And it's important that they're all heard, you know. Really, they do need to be all heard. And while it may take some time to consider some of them, they should all at least be heard. And how does it differ from a superintendent or from somebody who is actually already who's an employee of West Ada? So that would be more intrinsic, in that they are more with the day-to-day operations of a school and how curriculum and things like that, and how that is dealt with the actual core teaching. Whereas a board, for me, would be more about what is happening beyond that, or what is happening when students come home and when they share with their parents or with their families what is happening, and then we respond to that. More of an extrinsic from the actual day-to-day operations of a school. So, yeah, that's how they differ for me. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Next is Mrs. Penny, and I'll read the question again, two-part. What is a school board trustee's role and responsibility? And then second is, how does this role differ from the role of the superintendent or administration?
So yeah, I'll first tackle the board role. It's a vital role, as you all know, and it's difficult. It's setting policy for the district. Obviously, there's certain parameters that as a board you have to work within, but ultimately it's the high level. It's setting the goals and the priorities for the district, budgeting, et cetera. I see it kind of like the board of directors of a company. So those people usually say, here's the things we want to accomplish, here's the ideas we have, we've listened to the community or, you know, the teachers or the students, and you take those and then you know, they're put into practice by the chief operating officer, which is essentially what Dr. Bubb does. So he helps advise, he helps identify some of those areas that the board may want to consider, make recommendations, offer solutions, but ultimately it's the board's decision on how that policy is going to be put into place and the effects that would have on the community. And that includes parents, children, administrators, teachers, aides, it goes all the way down to janitors. I mean, every decision we make as a board affects those people in one way or another, the ripple effect, right? And so I think it's important, though, to remember that ultimately in the code of ethics that, you know, you attest to, really student success is ultimately the goal of the board. And so there's many facets to that and how we're going to get there and the different things that come up. But I think first and foremost, as a board member, we have to remember that that's our number one priority, is education of our community and our children. And again, there's going to be different ways to get there. There's going to be different opinions on how to get there. But that's why there's a board of many people, of many backgrounds, so that we can sit together and come up with the best solution for our children. And so that's how I see the two roles.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Halliday, the question again is, what is a school board trustee's role and responsibility? And how does this role differ from the role of the superintendent or administration?
So our role, your role, not our, our role as this trustee is to represent those in our district. That means that we represent the parents and the parents of the children that attend the schools in our district. So it is important that we understand their needs and we listen to them and focus on that. And then we come together as a board and we try to make the best decisions for this very, very, very large district, which is it's a big job. I like to do a lot of research. I research a lot. I research school districts all over the nation, and there are some really bad ones. And I'm going to tell you, I think West Ada School District is doing well, doing really well. And one district, well, one state, I like to, this is an article I found, and this is what I believe is the role, my role, or our role as a trustee. While teachers, school administrators, and school board members have a tremendous amount of authority over what and how our kids are taught in school, at the end of the day, parents, not schools, are responsible for raising their children. I truly believe that. We need to represent that. We need to involve our constituents in what we do. So what that means is we bring those ideas and we address it together, and we support Dr. Bubb in his role as he runs this school district, which is basically a mini community. We need to make him strong. That's our role as trustees. How do we make him strong? We support him, whatever that means. And I think he's done a great job in the year that he's had. Oh, I'm a little biased, I know him. But he has done a really good job, and you guys are on a good track. We have good candidates, and this is exciting. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And rounding it out with Mr. Rank, same question. What is a school board trustee's role and responsibility, and how does this role differ from the role of the superintendent or administration?
So for me, the board is, it's more of a guidance role. They are the voice of the community to provide guidance to Dr. Bubb. And Dr. Bubb is the one that is going to be executing what we suggest and what we want to see West Ada do on, per school or on an overall district level. It's akin to what one of the concepts we teach, or that I teach in my classes, where the board would be the strategic view of the district. They are the ones that are setting the general guidelines, and then the superintendent and the administration are the ones that are actually executing on that. They set the tactics for the administration to actually execute on that strategy that the board creates and sets forth. And like I said at the very beginning, the board really is the voice of the community, and the board, the board allows the community to have a say in how our children are educated. What are our priorities? What are our beliefs and goals? And that's really where I think the board really comes in and gives us that say, or that voice.
Thank you very much. The third question, and Mrs. Penny gets a chance to be first here. With funding issues, how does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
Well, that's a great question to have to start on from everybody. I think being good stewards of the public dollar is most important. So really looking at what we're spending money on, why we're spending it, the return again on the investment, and ensuring that we're looking at all options, not just going with the one thing that's presented as a board. Your job is to question that and to ensure that we're doing the right thing and being good stewards of those dollars. But at the end of the day, we want great education, and if we have to, levy or do that, it's something that we bring to the public. We listen to our community. We educate. I think that's a big thing, is educating the community as to why and what those dollars are going to be spent on. Because I feel like if we educate the community and the parents, I think no parent's going to say, no, I don't want a better school for my child. No, I don't want better textbooks. No, I don't want good teachers. I can't imagine a parent that would actually say that. But I think as a board, that's the transparency that needs to happen when there are funding issues, when there's a need. There needs to be a clear plan. There needs to be a clear goal to achieve. There needs to be expectations set of how those dollars are going to be used. And then there needs to be accountability. So when those dollars are given by the taxpayers, maybe begrudgingly, but ultimately we do it. We need to be held accountable as to where those dollars are going, and that they're going in the way that we propose to the community and our constituents that we represent would be done. So that's how I would address the need for maybe increase in taxes or a levy or whatnot. It's just really clear communication, expectations, and accountability.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Halliday, same question. With funding issues, how does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
Well, I think first and foremost, it starts with gaining full support of those we serve, and that would be the parents. They need to support us. They need to trust us. We need to be upfront with everything. They need to be able to hold us accountable for those policies and the direction that we're taking the school district. If we're not taking the right direction, it's going to be obvious. As you recall, the last 2 years, there was a lot of turmoil. And now I think things have settled down. I think parents do believe that we're going in the right direction, and we need to keep it going in the right direction. Once we gain that support, they aren't going to have a problem giving to levies. They're going to, because like what was previously said, who is going to say no to education? Who is going to say, no, we don't want better schools, we don't want. So what we need to do is in our school district, we need to raise the bar. And what I mean is we need to allow our teachers, give our teachers the ability to not just teach here anymore. How can we give them the ability to teach up here? When we do that and students come out of here and are successful, and they're successful in their communities, people are gonna want to flock to our district and support our district. That's what we need to aim for, is that kind of a support. You get that kind of support, they won't have a problem giving of, taxes won't be, it'll be easier to give. Also, I think the better district we have, the easier it will be for us to recruit teachers. And I'm not just talking any old teacher. We will be able to recruit the best. That would be my vision as a trustee, to help, how can we recruit? Because teachers are amazing, okay? They know they're not gonna become millionaires. They're doing it because they love it. And so we need to find those that really love it, and they're out there. And we do that, we shouldn't have a problem.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rank, same question. With funding issues, how does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
How I view it from more of the business background that I have is that you want to develop and foster the best practices. We're not the only district in the nation that is going through these issues. So there's a lot of districts that are going through this. I would say probably almost all, if not all, are. So there are a lot of practices that have been implemented that we can look at and hopefully use that can reduce the amount of money that we would have to spend, that we don't have to research and figure out how to do it. That's already been done by others, so that we can use those best practices to reduce the tax burden. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't spend more if we have to. We have to prepare our students for the future. I've always viewed education as being critical for the future, and we have to have the funding to do that. But on the flip side, we do have to balance it. A good example is my parents. They're on a very fixed income, and any increase to the tax burden really hurts them and makes it difficult for them to live in their current home. So that's the kind of balancing act that the board has to do between those two sides. I think that one way to make it easier to sell the idea of new taxes or to try to get more funding would be to be transparent. By being more transparent, people are going to see, where their taxes are going and see the uses of it and see how it's reflecting in the students that they're sending to the schools. And, we can also try to exhaust all reasonable options before actually going to the taxpayers to ask for more money. If we can show a track record of doing our best to exhaust all of those options, then I believe that the taxpayers will give us more leeway and realize that we really are looking out for their best interest to try and get them the best deal, so to speak, possible. And if we get better education, if our students are doing better overall, I think that we will see less pushback in general. I think that also would give us the advantage for opening other funding opportunities through grants and such of, having a higher quality education or students coming out with, a little bit better education. I think that would just open up some opportunities that we might not necessarily have to use taxpayer funds to, or we won't have to use taxpayer funds to achieve.
Thank you very much. And the last for question 3 is Mr. Baclean. And again, with funding issues, how does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
So first, of course. Let me say that recently there were some articles that were floating around Idaho education that talked about how Idaho was amongst the lowest of funding per student in the nation. And to be completely frank about it, with how the economy seems to be trending, it is unlikely that there's going to be some kind of an influx of money from somewhere. But for me, though, I'd like to also relate a tale of two schools, if you will. One of the schools that I taught at in Taiwan was a private school had very high tuition. So yes, it was a school for wealthy kids and wealthy families. There was never, ever any budgeting issues. If we ever needed something, we would just write a letter to the parents and we'd have it within a week, whatever it was. Even when we started using iPads in school, it was a matter of weeks before we had iPads for each student. It was that kind of a school, and it was, I taught there for a long time, and we had good, whatever resource we needed, we had. Let me contrast that with another school that I taught at in West Valley, Utah, that had a lot of refugees. We had a lot of Micronesians, we had a lot of Polynesians at the school, and there was, suffice to say that the budgeting was not quite on the same level. It was considerably lower, and I loved teaching at both schools, because for me, I'm of the very firm opinion that a good teacher can work miracles with a piece of paper and a pencil. Whether instruction is from an iPad or from a whiteboard with a whiteboard marker, or even from just their actions. A good teacher who has teaching the proper methodology can do really well in the district. So for me, I think that funding constraints will be something that in Idaho, in our district, that from time to time we'll have to live with and we'll have to deal with, and we'll just have to find ways to work around. And I think that with proper instruction and with more faith in our teachers, I believe that my kids have done very, very well in the West Ada School District, and I think that there's a lot of good instruction to be had here. And so for me, I would say that methodology, for the most part, is over finance. And I have to agree with trustee over here with candidate over here, I'm sorry, that transparency is certainly very important. And I think that for finance, that definitely is a thing. But generally speaking, I think that is really important for us to be transparent with the things that we do as a school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question number 4, and we'll start with Mrs. Halliday. Here again, this is a 2-part question. So, can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of? And secondly, explain how you would manage this in your communication with the community, especially when communicating with community members that shared your opinion.
So I'm going to have you repeat that.
Yeah, no problem at all. I know it's a lot. So the first part, can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of? And then secondly, explain how you would manage this in your communication out to the community, especially with those community members that shared or agreed with your opinion.
Okay, yes, absolutely. We're a team. We have to support each other regardless. Even though I may not agree with everything, at the end of the day, if it's going to meet the needs of the entire district, I have to trust that each and every one of us as an individual have brought forth the issues and the conflicts or whatever that we bring from the areas that we represent. We all will represent, all our areas are very different. They have very different economics. And so you have to take that into consideration. Some areas are growing more than others. So yes, we have to support each other. And we have to make sure that we communicate in these meetings and make sure that you are communicating all that you need to so that you can make sure you are supporting your constituents. So in managing that, you just have to keep on top of your communication with them. In other words, you know, have a set time that you meet with them, update them on what, you know, because I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really one to pay attention to these until, you know, 2020, and then I started paying attention. So, and you have to respect that parents are very busy, as we all know. So, you know, as a trustee, you got to find a way to establish that communication. And I already know how I would do that. Probably through a blog or website or whatever, communicate what we talked about. And just explain to them, look, we're a community. We have to work together. And this may not have benefited us this time, but next time it may benefit us. And, you know, that's how strong communities, strong nations are run. We're just a little part of a very strong nation. But this is where it begins. And this is where our focus is.
Thank you very much. Question for Mr. Rank. Can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of? And the second part is, explain how you would manage this in your communication with the community, especially with those community members that agree with or share your opinion.
I can definitely support a decision that I disagree with. I think it's very important for the board to show a united front, that everybody needs to have that, or everybody in the board needs to show that consensus that you are together and that there is not any major discord. I think when you have that kind of discord showing, that creates distrust in the community, that creates problems in the community. If you can have everybody understand that even though you may have disagreements and have different views, you can come together even in disagreement and come and support it, I think that goes a long ways to creating confidence in the community, no matter what the views are. The time to voice the views would be in the meetings before the decision's being made. That's when, you know, I would voice my views. That's when my views would really matter for those times of things. After that, it's time to be on board and have the consensus. And I think to share or to communicate it to my constituents, I would just be transparent. I would talk to them, let them know this is what we did, this is the procedures we went through, this is the debate that we had, this is what was talked about. You know, I would probably try to avoid any specific people talking about things, but more in the generalities of what was discussed so that nobody's specifically targeted one way or the other, and try to get people to understand that the procedures or the decision was not made in a vacuum. It wasn't just a dictate. It did have wide-ranging views that all came together to make that decision. and then, like I said, at the end of the day, once it's done, that decision has to be supported by all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Baclian, same question. Can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of? And then explain how you would manage this in your communication with the community, especially with those community members that agree with or share your opinion.
To relate to kind of probably a situation that we've all been in, if you've ever gone to dinner with your family and you have kids and everybody has a different opinion about where you want to go, everybody has been in the situation where you have had to accept whatever it is, decision that the family makes of where you're going to go to dinner. I mean, for my family, where my wife is Taiwanese and me being from Hawaii, like I'm not going to go to an Asian restaurant and like refuse to eat just because we didn't go to Mobetta's or something. I mean, you have to accept whatever it is that the body of the board decides. And it's, yes, the discussions happen. Excuse me. Discussions happen before that decision is made, right? Before whatever policy or whatever agreement you come to, before that happens, there is discussion. Hopefully there's thorough discussion about what decision is made, and then, yes, that's when you voice your opinion, and then, excuse me, sorry, my voice, and then, and that's when you can voice your discussion. Then once the board has made a decision, then yes, there should be a full support. There have been plenty of times in my life, and both in leadership or in school, and many times, and currently right now in employment, that there are things that happen that I perhaps don't agree with, but you voice your opinion, and then you continue with your life. You continue, and if there are constituents that need to understand why it is you come to that decision, it is transparency is paramount. It is absolute paramount to be transparent with them so that they can also understand why they came to that decision. Because if there's one thing that's very frustrating is there's something that comes out, a decision that comes out that you don't agree with, and there is no transparency, it can be very frustrating as to why that decision comes to, because then they're just left up to their own devices, and then imagination runs wild in each individual if you don't tell them why it is you reached that decision. So transparency, definitely, communication after why you came to that decision is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Penny, can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of, and explain how you would manage this in your communication with the community, especially with those community members that agree with or share your opinion?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the pledges that you take as a trustee, right, is to support the decisions made by the board. And so that's really important to be able to kind of put those personal feelings aside when you are making these decisions, first of all. How you do that. It's not easy, right? I'm sure that you guys have experienced a lot of this over the last while, and it's not an easy position to be in, but I think the important things are communication. So ensuring that you've listened to, not just listened to, but understood where your constituents are coming from, especially those that maybe share your opinion or don't, because we're going to have constituents in all of our zones that go one way or the other on issues, and they're not all going to agree. And so who are you going to listen to out of that, right? That's a hard decision to make. So I think just listening and understanding where people are coming from, why they feel the way they do, because I know in my experience, there's always kind of a way to yes. There's always a way to sit down, think critically, and figure out how can we get to a point where, people are maybe not, it's not perfect, right? But it's a point where everyone is at least somewhat satisfied that they've been listened to and that their ideas were thought of and considered, and when making those decisions. Obviously, conflict occurs. That's just the nature of life every day. If you're married, it's one of those things you probably deal with more than you'd like sometimes. But I think then ensuring that when you make those decisions, you support the board and you ensure that your communications are respectful. So when you're communicating with your constituents about a decision that was made that maybe you didn't support, or maybe a part of your constituents didn't support, it's important to explain why did I make the decision? Why was this the decision? What was it relied upon? What facts did I look at? Because sometimes I feel when you explain those facts, the nitty gritty that some of us think are boring and don't want to really think about. People tend to come around and understand, like, okay, I may not agree with what you did, but I understand why you did it. And I think in that situation, while they may not agree, again, with the ultimate decision, they can respect the why behind what you did. And I think it's important then to, communicate that and respect that. And sometimes revisit topics that may come up later, and your view may change at a later date, depending on the circumstances and the situation that the board and the district finds itself in. And so being flexible and understanding are just key components to that.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Rank, we're coming around to you again. What resources or processes will you use to stay informed regarding issues and concerns of our community?
So I'm one of those kinds of people. I like to stay informed. I like to have information. So I'm on social media. I view news websites. I listen to local talk radio for local issues. I talk to friends. I talk to family. I try to keep current on what is going on in the community. My daughter goes here to Renaissance. I'm friends with a couple of her teachers. I talk to them from time to time. So from a school perspective, I have friends in the schools. I've got other friends in other districts that I can speak with and get some ideas from. So I get a lot of information from a lot of different sources so that I can weigh it against each other. If you get all your information from one source, it becomes very biased. You get this echo chamber effect that I think is very detrimental. And I want to get all sides. I want to understand issues in a much more in-depth way than just, one way, so to speak. I will have my views, and my views are not always well-informed. I will freely admit that. So when I have to make a big decision, I will research it. I will, living in the internet age has made the ability to research so incredibly easy. I think it's almost a travesty when people are not able to keep well-informed on whatever issues there are, because there are so many resources. The bigger issue is filtering out the extraneous, stuff that's not true or is just, wrong to what is true. And I think that if you can get enough varied voices to listen to, the ones that you hear repeated, those are the ones you can start to understand as being probably true and use those to as a basis for your decisions. So that's kind of my procedure for understanding an issue, a big issue especially.
Thank you very much. Mr. Baclian, what resources or processes will you use to stay informed regarding issues and concerns of our community?
Thank you. So I try to stay informed about our community through, I'm not on a lot of social media, but through social media. There's a lot of social media out there. I do try to keep pretty well informed about educational trends in Idaho, because that's what I've been interested in. So one of my concerns with that is that there are a lot of echo chambers out there, and there's a lot of leaning one way or the other, and sometimes it can be difficult to gauge how the community actually feels just by by going to those resources, social media and or the news, because those are from news is from the same source usually, and social media are usually from a similar demographic. And so it's important to have a diversity of things that you can go to, they can engage in the community in other ways to try to find out what they think about things. And for me, it's important, like if you're trying to understand a community and you really want to get feedback on how you can best serve in the community, it's really important that you establish trust so that they can communicate with you in that way, because not everybody feels like, not everybody has that trust, and a lot of people won't communicate. If I for example, like we know, my family, we know quite a few immigrant families or Asian families in the community, and none of them are aware of anything that goes on with the West Ada School Board, because they just, it's not like an issue of like they're scared to approach or anything. They're just, the communication is not there sometimes, and because it's like a cultural thing, and so they don't always feel comfortable approaching. And so that would be establishing trust and making them feel comfortable to be able to approach you or to be able to establish those lines of communication. And so that's, for me, that would be the most important thing, to establish trust, that there's other sources other than just medians, other than just news or social media, because those can be kind of leaning one way or the other, so to speak. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Pena, same question. What resources or processes will you use to stay informed regarding issues and concerns of our community?
I think the most important thing here is to acknowledge that one medium is not going to work for every constituent. So it's important to have a variety of methods and ways that you would get in touch with or get the opinion or concerns of your community. I'm a firm believer on boots on the ground. I think it's the easiest and most effective way to communicate. Face-to-face is always going to be the best way to communicate. It can't always be accomplished, but it's something we should strive to. So visiting schools within your zone, having time available for people to come and discuss concerns. Additionally, obviously, email, telephone, there's many ways to accomplish this, but I think at the end of the day, the goal is to reach the most number of people that you can, and so having a strategy to do that understands that not everybody communicates in the same way is important. And I also feel like follow-up is really important. I know it's not possible from every email or phone call, I'm sure, that the board gets, but I think as much as the board can, follow up with individuals that express concerns or have questions. Again, that conversation is so important to understanding where people are coming from. Just reading an email, as we know, we can infer context. We can infer anger or whatever that may be. And I think sometimes picking up the phone and having a conversation with someone and understanding, well, tell me what's really going on. Tell me, why is this bothering you? What's happening? Why is this happening? And really getting to the root cause of the issue kind of goes to what I talked about before with being informed as making decisions for your constituents. It's really understanding where they're coming from and not just what they're saying, because sometimes those things don't line up. So again, I think social media is wonderful. It's a great way to keep in touch. But for me, honestly, that personal communication is important. Additionally, I know as a parent, I fill out parent engagement surveys all the time for my children's schools. I would love to see those. I would love to see what the parents are saying about their schools, their teachers, the resources that they feel they have. And so I think that's probably, I don't know if it's an untapped resource because I don't know what the board has available to it, but I think that's an avenue to maybe explore, which would be how do we use these parent engagement surveys to also understand each zone, where the parents are coming from, and maybe even help guide some of those questions that the board might have for parents and or teachers and or students when students get to an age where they can participate. I think that's really important as well. So multifaceted, prefer in person, but understand that that's not always going to be possible.
Thank you. Mrs. Halliday, what resources or processes will you use to stay informed regarding issues and concerns of our community?
Well, whatever it takes, actually. I try to stay current on everything, and one thing I noticed is our governor recently, title of the article, Idaho dumps Common Core, governor signs legislation to replace academic standards. Something we should know about, right, as a school district. And they did this because our test scores were not improving. In fact, they were kind of going the direction that you don't want them to go. And this was done with educators, parents, and state officials. It was not done just with one group. And what I've noticed with my experience on the panels and boards that I have had, this is how it's done in the state of Idaho at the state level. They don't just whip things out. They send out questionnaires, and then they gather the information, And that's something that really needs to be communicated with our constituents. I look at the West Ada School District website, and one thing I noticed is we recently revamped our math for, right? I meant to have this printed out, and I didn't, I should have. But we did that, and you guys did it just like they did it here. You had parents in that group, you had teachers, and you had administrators. Last spring, I met with Trustee Renee Azuno, and we talked about, she asked me how we could involve parents more, because that was an issue in 2020. And that was a weird year. And I don't want to put any blame there. No blame. That was weird. And we talked, and we tried to figure out a way to help bridge that communication. That's another way to do it. Understand the legislative process, obviously. Understand what's going on. Understand how to talk with your legislators. When I set up Parent Choice and Voice, myself and a couple of my board members, we met with the superintendent at the time. It was an amazing meeting. We met with the Idaho education advisor to the governor. He was awesome. He spent an hour with us, and he said, okay, you got to tell us what's going on with your schools. And we told him, as a group, as a parent group, we said, look, this is what's going on. We feel like their hands are tied, so we had that communication. Knowing how to do that is huge. And part of that, again, is to inform our constituents. So that's how I would do it.
Thank you very much. And our last question for this evening, and Mr. Bacleon gets the pleasure of doing this one first. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who may not agree with you is crucial in this role. Explain what has prepared you to deal with scrutiny that may come at times from teachers, students, and parents.
I'm going to ask you, would you mind reading it one more time for me?
Absolutely. That was a lot there. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who may not agree with you is crucial in this role. Explain what has prepared you to deal with scrutiny that may come at times from students, teachers, and parents.
Well, dealing with students is pretty easy, right? No, I'm just kidding. You just tell them the way it is, right? No, I'm kidding. You don't do that. Yeah, so probably the time that I had to deal with scrutiny the most was as an administrator of a school that was in decline. And my boss at this other school and I were kind of brought over to assist in any way that we can to try to remedy some things that were going on, and to remedy some things and to try to help the best way we can. It was, when we got there, the staff was on fire. Every staff meeting for at least the first month was just, they sat and they folded their arms and they just stared at us while we read through our agenda. It was not very pleasant, but the way that we dealt with that is we were transparent in what decisions that we were trying to make moving forward. I talked with individuals, with all the teachers there, to try to, at least to get them to convince them to try to let them know that we were there to try to assist both them as teachers and also the school as a whole to try to improve where they were. And it's, there's going to be, no matter what decision you make, there's always going to be somebody who disagrees with you. You can never, ever satisfy every person. And that's why, like has been said several times this evening, is that transparency is such an important tool that we communicate why we made a certain decision. And even with that transparency, though, there still is going to be criticism, and no small amount of criticism. And so at the end of the day, they just have to, it's just a matter of trying to communicate that what you're trying to do is the best is what the board has felt is the best decision moving forward. And at the end of the day, that is really what's the most important, is try to communicate. We've gotten feedback from the community. We've gotten our feedback from the staff or from teachers or from students. And this is what we feel is the best decision for these reasons. And that's what you have to do moving forward. There's always going to be scrutiny. And, you know, yeah, there have been times when it can cause anxiety for people who are in these kinds of positions, and something that I've actually thought about, given a lot of thought to, because it's not a pleasant thing to deal with. But after weighing those options, or after weighing both sides of that, I felt that it's really important. Giving back to the community kind of trumps that scrutiny, and I'd rather be one who can try to contribute more to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Penny, I'll read it again, a long question. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who may not agree with you is crucial in this role. Explain what has prepared you to deal with scrutiny that may come at times from students, teachers, and parents.
That's a great question, and I think probably relevant after the last couple years as well, with everything that occurred, and good and bad. But for me, a lot of my education in law school is based around conflict resolution, right? So alternative dispute resolution, you know, client negotiations. As an attorney, it's what you deal with all the time. Imagine, you know, a very hotly contested divorce. You're in the room with a lot of people who are not happy. And you have to find a way to come to a common ground, and you have to find a way to relate to everyone. And I think that's a skill that I possess, and I think the people that work with me would agree, is that I find a way to relate to everyone. Because at the end of the day, we all really want the same thing, right? At the end of the day, I think we can boil it down to wanting the same thing. How we get there, we may differ. But I think keeping that in mind as you work with individuals from different backgrounds and perspectives is very important, because you really have to assume best intent. Everyone that comes to the table and cares and is passionate about what they do and their views have the best intent. And so you have to look at that from your perspective and really just assume that, and feel good about your interaction with that person at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I mean, are there going to be disagreements? Of course. Every day, at work, I have disagreements between employees, or a physician that wants to do this, but the law says this. You just have to find a way to present it in a manner that they understand why you are doing what you do, that you hear them, that you appreciate their concern, that you'll take their concern under advisement and look into it to see if there's an alternate way that you can do that in the future if you can't do it now. And so I really just think people relations are really important, and people skills. And that's why I prefer to work one-on-one a lot of times with individuals that have questions or concerns, because that's when you really get to come down to that common level and have that same level of understanding and that assumption of best intent, and just have that conversation. And again, people feeling heard and understood, even if you ultimately don't agree with them, I think helps a lot with that situation. Understanding it's not always going to be the case. You can't control every person that you engage with, but you can control how you respond and how you receive that information.
Thank you. Mrs. Halliday. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who may not agree with you is crucial in our role. Explain what has prepared you to deal with scrutiny that may come at times from students, teachers, and parents.
Well, what has prepared me is I understand my focus and my purpose, number one, as a parent, and number two, as a constituent in this school district. My purpose would be to ensure parents have a say in the process, because ultimately they need to have a say. They're responsible for the child. If they feel like they know what's going on in the education of their child, they're going to be just fine. But my focus ultimately is on the child. I can't tell you, you all know I've been in this district over 18 years. I've attended many, many track meets, many, many basketball games. I walked into the front office at Mountain View many, many times, and all I see are strong and amazing kids. This is my focus. How, as a board, can we help and enable these kids to become the strong individuals that they need to become so that we can create a strong community in the state of Idaho? That's why people are moving here. We are strong, and we need to keep it that way. For example, you all know I have 2 kids with disabilities. Anytime I'm even out in a grocery store, and I'm walking with one of my daughters, there will be these, students. They're always, "Hi, Abby." They go out of their way to be friendly with my daughter with disabilities. We have good students. That is a huge resource that we need to use. And the constituents of West 8, District 2 will know that about me. And, when conflicts arise, if I stay the course and I keep this focus on the child, I don't think there's how can you have too many conflicts with that? I realize it happens, you guys all probably know, but at the end of the day, when you are focused on the number one thing, which is the child, and making them strong adults, you're going to be able to handle any adversity that comes your way, because they'll know where you stand ultimately.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Rank, being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who may not agree with you is crucial in this role. Explain what has prepared you to deal with scrutiny that may come at times from students, teachers, and parents.
So I'm kind of lucky. I'm pretty easygoing, so I tend to get along with people fairly well. Usually when there is a conflict, I believe in trying to understand what the conflict is. Get to the source of the conflict, understand what it is, and see if there's a way to reach some sort of consensus, or maybe give and take a little bit to, so both sides get a little representation in those decisions. As you know, my position as a instructor at Boise State, I deal with students quite a bit. I work with them. I try to help them as much as I can. There's times that I will bend over backwards to do everything I can to help them. I've taken calls 1 o'clock in the morning to help them on major projects. So I've done a lot to try to be a better professor, and I would bring that to this kind of position too. I try to help. I like to help people. I like to make people feel involved. I like to help people feel that they're part of the part of whatever's going on. It's not always pleasant. That's the long and short of it. I do not envy what you guys have been going through these last few years. It's been ugly, and I view it as kind of giving back for me to do this. I think it's very important to do that. And I think that it's also good to keep that dialogue open, that even if you disagree with that person, maybe the decision goes against what they want, the next time something similar comes up, talk with them, keep that dialogue open, and see if there's a way you can implement their idea next time, or parts of their idea, and bring them in on that decision-making process next time, or if even that time, if you can, possibly. So I think those kinds of things definitely help to help reach consensus. Consensus is not always easy. It's not always. It's very difficult to work in these kinds of environments at times when you do have those adversarial views. I do believe in trying my best to make everybody heard at the very least, be transparent. We've talked about that many times during this meeting. Allow people to understand that I am doing my very best to represent everybody and the best interest of our students and everybody that we're dealing with. So that's kind of how I view it. And I want to thank everybody for this opportunity to do this. I don't envy your decision. We've got some phenomenal people on this board. So I do feel happy that whatever the choice, it will be a great choice. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our questions. On behalf of the board, I'd like to just make a comment and say we really, really appreciate each of you stepping forward. It's hard to put yourself out there and engage in a process like this, but we really, really do appreciate it, and it's very clear that you all care about this district. You care about its success, and you care about our children. And so, like Mr. Rank just said, I think no matter where the vote comes down, we're going to have a quality individual. So thank you very, very much. We're going to move into a work session part here, and so I won't make you sit at that table. We'll let you find a seat out there. So, but thank you very, very much. Okay, so we'll move into the next item on our agenda, which is a work session regarding the implementation of full-day kindergarten in the West Ada School District. Dr. Bubb.
Chair Kofelt, trustees, we are extremely thankful that there's been some literacy money that went through the legislature recently, and we're excited to be able to move towards full-day kindergarten for all of our schools as an option for our parents. And I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Marcus Myers, to kind of walk through what our plan is. We've done, looking at this for probably the last few months, we've done some operational investigations, looking at facilities to make sure that we're going to be okay from a facility standpoint, and then also looking at it from a pedagogy standpoint, making sure that we're putting good kids in really good positions in our kindergarten classrooms. But we expect to see great growth with this opportunity, and I will turn it over to Mr. Myers.
All right. Chair Kofelt, trustees, Dr. Bubb. Let's talk full-day kindergarten in West Ada, and something I'm super excited about, and something that we're going to start with some celebrations, talk about the planning that has already taken place and the planning next steps that are going to go forward, so that you as trustees walk away, and those listening walk away knowing that there is a plan in place for full-day kinder, and that through that plan we have a focus on providing the best instructional opportunities for our kinder students throughout the course of that entire day, knowing that we want to be able to provide that level of flexibility as well. And so that's the lens that we're going to. First of all, I want to start out with a celebration of kindergarten, and I very intentionally picked these pictures of West Ada students because I want to bring us back to kindergarten and that first day of school. That first day of opportunity for parents and students to be with their peers in a school setting, to sit down in a school, the excitement of new school clothes and showing up in that, the excitement of getting onto a school bus for the first time, the excitement of eating a snack at school, the excitement of going out to the playground, the excitement of learning how to read and letters and manipulating all of those tools and resources that our kindergartners get to do in those first days of school in kindergarten. And kindergarten means so much more. It is so much academic and laying the foundation of the academic success of our students, but we all know it's so much more than that. It's a tremendous celebration, not only for our students, but for our staff. It is this renewal of energy and life that comes into a building each and every time in an elementary classroom, and the excitement behind that is felt with kindergarten registration that comes up next month in West Ada, continues over the course of this new opportunity, these new get-to-knows, and it's a great opportunity for our parents and guardians for the first time to get a view of what school means in West Ada, what it's like, the relationships that are being built, what we celebrate, what we value, and what we care for. And this is an opportunity in full-day kindergarten to increase those opportunities over the course of an entire school day. And so let's talk about teaching and learning through the lens of kindergarten and our full-day model. First of all, the graph that you see in front of us is our West Ada Way. That is our foundational graphic behind our career and college success model. The idea behind when our students leave at year 13, they walk away with these skills to be successful, whether that's career or whether that's college or that new opportunities that they see in front of them in year 13. It's foundational through our professional learning communities, how we collaboratively get the work done, and it's focused on our mission, vision, values, and goals. That wheel that you see in the middle are all of the intentional systems we put into place through an instructional model to say we plan our instruction with a purpose. We focus on cultivating learning climates that engage students. We instruct with intention. That means we do it on purpose. We know what students need. We know what we prioritize, and we know what they need to be in order to be successful. We assess as a system, and those are those updates that we provide, and we impact student learning by identifying what are our outcomes in that. What are we doing throughout this wheel and course of instructional opportunities that's impacting, moving the needle of student learning? What I want you to know is that this applies to kindergarten as well. It applies to it in any kindergarten setting, whether that's full day or half day. But what I want to bring light to is that within a full day setting, we have more opportunity to extend these opportunities throughout the course of the day. But regardless of what that time frame looks like, our commitment to these foundational practices in West Ada, K-12, and I know we're specifically talking about kindergarten this evening, this is what we're all about. And that will hold true regardless of full day or half day kinder and the decisions that parents are going to make in regards to this. So what I want you to know is that there are plans in place, and I'm going to walk through these plans through this full day model of instruction in West Ada, is that we're going to be intentional about this full day model, that we're going to use 6 hours to the best of our ability for students, knowing that the needs of our students are going to vary. But that's true now, whether it's in a half day setting in kindergarten or a full day setting in first grade. Our needs vary across the board, and so we adapt and adjust to meet those needs based on this model. That will continue through a full day model of kindergarten in West Ada. It becomes an extension of academic priority standards, our students' exposures through great instructional and highly effective instructional strategies to focus on those priority standards where we say these are the skills, aptitudes, the competencies our students need to be able to know, do, and be able to understand as measured by our common assessments to be successful in first grade and move them to that next level. It's about increase and extending our social skills opportunities for kids. The opportunities they have to be kids and interact with other kids and adults in a setting that allows them to learn not only the academics they need to learn, but the soft skills that you see around this West Ada model as well. And it also allows for an extension of flexibility for individual developmental needs. Now, we do that in any setting already. We do that in our classrooms. We provide for individualized responses to student needs in any setting. In a full day setting, that allows for increased opportunities for that. And so when we talk about, well, what does a kindergartner's day look like in a full day school setting? Well, first it looks like a number of chunked academic blocks to increase engagement and build stamina. What that means is developmentally, kindergartners need to transition about every 8 to 12 minutes. They need to move. You got to have transitional changes. You've got to change up instructional strategies. And I want to celebrate kindergarten teachers with this because they are masters at doing this and doing it well. My apologies, let me go back one slide. They are masters at doing this and doing this so incredibly well. And we're going to build upon that level of expertise to extend that opportunity and those numbers of transitions over the course of a full day. What we don't want to do is say, here's what we just did. Well, what did I do here? Yeah, here's what I did in the morning, and we're going to just repeat this in the afternoon. That's not an effective use of that time, but extending that time, building in some additional enrichment and intervention opportunities as a student moves throughout the course of that day and extending those opportunities for both academic and social skills instruction. We talked about frequent transitions and varying instructional strategies and the importance of that. Opportunities, increased opportunities for structured play and social skills practice. Students need to play and practice social skills, the soft skills of the job that they need to do to be able to move on to first grade, and we teach that directly. And so in order to do that, that provides additional opportunities. Now again, we do that in a half-day setting as well, but you can imagine that within a full-day setting, throughout the course of the day, students will have more opportunities to practice that. And here's a key takeaway from this, and we talk about the instructional model as we define that better as we move forward, and we'll talk about how as a team we're going to define that better. It's about extending opportunities from 2.5 hours daily to a full day. It's not about a repeat of what took place in the morning and the afternoon. And so what we want to do is use that time wisely and build the stamina over the course of a day to say, we're going to get as much of that 6-hour engagement as we can, building up to their first year in first grade. Because one of the other values behind full day kindergarten is that it eliminates a short delay in first grade where students then have to get used to a full day of school. So it allows us an opportunity to build stamina up until that point. That way when we start first grade, we're ready to go for a full day on day one. And that should be one of our goals as well, okay? Knowing that the timeline in which students are prepared and ready for that is going to vary. It will, but that's true in any setting in West Ada, in any of our classrooms at any grade level. All right, I talked about the flexibility for individual needs. So let's do some, let's say, what ifs, okay? So here's a what if. A parent or guardian requests a shorter day for their child. They have good reason to say, I'm not sure 6 hours is gonna go well. In fact, I think around 1 o'clock, it might not go very well. That their day, maybe they run out of stamina, they run out of energy at that day, and so the instructional opportunities that they may be able to have access to might not be as beneficial during that time frame. What am I doing here, Troy? There we go. And so the flexibility of a full day schedule allows for us to do that, but the additional piece behind the intentionality of our instructional day allows us to create some guidance together as a team with parents and guardians to say, here's the best time that pickup would be. So here's an example. A parent requests that shorter day and contacts the school principal, contacts the teacher and says, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. We'd hold a quick meeting. We're going to provide some guidance for building leadership and for teachers around that quick meeting. And in that meeting, we want to know why. What are your concerns? What can we do? Because remember, our goal is that increased capacity for a full day and that level of stamina for a student. So what are their concerns and what are their reasons? That is something we would do in any setting, whether the concern was about full day kinder or about another concern. We'd want to sit down and meet with parents about their why, so that we can address that. And we would invite the teacher, the principal, additional school team members if it was needed, and of course parents and guardians there and anybody they'd like to bring with them. And so that example, that might be, we might bring in a counselor to provide that additional support for social skills. We might bring in health services to say, well, what is it stamina and energy wise that we can help support throughout the course of the day in building that? We're going to create some intentional timeframes for pickup. And so what we're doing is we're building an instructional model for a kindergarten's day, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. But essentially what we're going to be able to tell parents is that if you choose to elect to pick them up, the best time frame to do that is going to be between 1 o'clock and 1:15. And I'm giving you an example of now, but we'll have that better defined before we end this school year. In fact, within the next month or so. And so we're going to define that. And what we're saying with that is it's not that they're getting everything they need in the morning and the afternoon is just an opportunity for increased play. What we're saying is that instructionally throughout the course of the day, they're going to get a highly effective instructional opportunity. This is a time frame where a transition is going to be best. And if you can imagine a kindergartner's day, they will have had those academic transitions and social skill transitions throughout the day in small chunks. They would have then had probably a specials opportunity like a music or PE opportunity that way. They may have it in the afternoon too, and so we don't want them to miss out on that opportunity. But you can imagine them coming back in from lunch, having that social skills carpet time where they're talking about self-regulation and what their learning goals are. And now we're back from lunch, and so here we go, and we're going to move forward with learning. And then you can imagine a 1 o'clock time frame where a small group of students can be escorted to the front office so that they can be picked up if that's to be the case. And so it allows for this instructional time where instruction can continue, but parents who feel like that might not be ready for their child yet, we can accommodate that particular time frame. What that also does when you build an instructional model like that, it allows us to increase that capacity through a meeting that says, okay, so for the months of August and September, we're going to try this out, this pickup at about 1:15 time frame. So then what if in the month of October, we increase that by a half an hour and we see what we can do, and we'll meet again and look at Johnny's success or whoever student's success is in regards to how that's moving forward. And so we can continue to add to that time frame rather than take it away, if that makes sense. So it allows for the creation of a plan to increase that stamina, and I gave that example of like increasing 30 minutes for next quarter, but that is something we're going to approach kid by kid. And if there's a concern, we're going to approach it kid by kid and work with families and parents to be able to provide that support with the goal of being full day ready before first grade so we can hit the ground running with full days of instruction and those opportunities when we get to first grade. All right, so more core instruction. So this has much to do with the opportunities within a full day. And so I talked a little bit about this, but when we talk about core instruction, what we're talking about is that direct whole group in kindergarten, that's smaller group rotations and that frequent change of opportunities, of core instruction in what would be mathematics, written language, and reading, okay, and in ELA. And so that's core instructional components. And so we're talking about more opportunities for that in small chunks throughout the course of the day. It also allows for increases in intervention and enrichment. So we know that if a student needs additional support or needs some enrichment opportunities, it allows for increased time to do that. And all of a sudden, time is less of a variable for our kindergarten students, and that is quite a benefit. And so I just noted a little bit that it increases that time and opportunity to address individual needs for students. We still do this in all of our school settings. We do this now in a half-day setting. This just gives us more opportunities for time throughout the course of the day that way. All right, so what are the plans? What's taking place now with teams across West Ada to ensure what I just talked about is ready to go when we start school in August? Here's the first one. There is a full-day kinder planning team that meets every Friday. We have already started meeting every Friday. The first thing I want to let you know is we haven't waited to this moment to do some what-if planning, okay? So that has already taken place. That team meets every Friday, and that team's role is to identify what are the next action steps, what are the plans that have been taken care of so far, and what do we do next as far as resources and needs and moving forward. That includes, are you messing with me, Troy? Sure. It includes updating building leadership. It also includes working with the communication team to update our parents and guardians on those next steps too. So here's an example of those who are at the table. And this isn't everybody because it's like a 20-person team. Health services, counseling, curriculum, nutrition, transportation, facilities. We all sit and go department by department. Where are you at? What are you going to do next? What do we need to do? What did you accomplish in that weekly time frame, okay? That ensures that when we're ready to go, we're ready to go. And the goal of that being that first meeting is an hour. The last meeting is 5 minutes because we're ready to go and we're checking in with everybody at the table and everybody knows exactly we are ready to go with kinder, okay? Full day kinder instructional plan. And I talked about what does a kindergartner's instructional plan look like. We've already started some of the work on that, working with some teacher representatives. We have Tuition K now, which are an extended day opportunities. We also have extended day kindergarten through some of our grant programs for additional intervention opportunities. We have very successful models of that taking place already, and so we're going to use the wisdom of those folks who are doing it already and pull them in as guiding coalitions. We also, tomorrow, a vacancy will be posted for a teacher on special assignment. That's what a TOSA is. This is a full-day kinder implementation coach who's going to work directly with that guiding coalition team, be out in buildings, be an informational liaison back and forth so that we're going to be out in kinder buildings watching this unfold and watching this take place and making changes and feedback. This TOSA is going to help us do this as well, okay? Essentially, that TOSA is going to be the best of the best, where we're going to put into place and say, help us create the best of the best, and let's get out and see what this looks like as we begin to work with teachers, families, and students. Kindergarten registration, that's that next plan. That starts next month. Want to let you know that the communication team has already started that communication with families. Schools have already started that communication with families. They have the resources they need, the days and times established, including any additional support services like translators and additional testers to identify students who are coming to us to begin to build those relationships on a very special day with registration and to get that information and contact information so we can begin to reach out to families. We will have this information on a flyer is not a great term for this, but basically a one-page informational flyer. Communications has already started working on that for families, so we'll have that ready to go for April registration. Before that begins, we can get that directly into the hands of our families and to our principals and teachers who will be running those registration events. Hiring processes. We do need to hire some kinder teachers, okay? That being said, the work for that has already been done. There's a teacher applicant pool posting already up for kinder teachers. Also want to let you know that our recruitment and retention administrator in West Ada, Jennifer Fletcher, has been out at career fairs, creating hiring pools of the best already, and already actively recruiting excellent kinder teachers to come and teach with us in West Ada to do this. We'll also be reaching out to kinder teachers who are currently half-time or job share kinder teachers and talking with them about what their options are, knowing that moving forward it will be that full day model, okay? We're creating building principle guidance for building principals. That first round of guidance has already gone out in terms of here are the what if plannings involved. They will receive another one tomorrow that says this information was presented to the board. Here are the final opportunities, and we're moving forward with these final decisions, okay? That hasn't been sent to building principals yet. We were waiting for this opportunity this evening, but we'll do that first thing tomorrow morning because they are getting questions from families and parents and staff for sure. That guidance is around what to do with requests for shortened days already. What does that parent meeting guidance look like so that we can get to know students that way and help build support? And then what are those additional supports and needs? Another reality behind this is there is an impact on 1st through 5th grades, and how can we address that impact within a building? A lot of that around master schedule and intervention enrichment opportunities that exist within a building. And when you create full day structures, you need to create a structure for that as well, okay? District-wide communication, that like I said, we've already started the work on that. That begins this Thursday, March 31st, where that initial information will be headed out to teachers. Much of it outlined around the information that I'm sharing with you tonight, okay? All right, here's the bottom line. We are going to create systems where all West Ada kindergarten students receive highly effective instruction throughout the school day. So if a parent elects to make a decision about picking their child up early, we're going to work toward building stamina with them on an individual needs basis. But regardless, they're going to get highly effective kindergarten instruction throughout the course of that day. And with that intentional schedule, it allows for flexibility to address those individual needs that we know are going to exist. But this is true. I could make this statement true for every classroom in West Ada, okay? We meet individual needs, we make adjustments instructionally because we want to meet students where they're at and engage them to build that stamina for additional learning as we move forward, okay? Lastly, the bottom line is this: full day creates opportunities for more of this in West Ada, and that's what we want. And I very intentionally picked different opportunities in kindergarten that are going to be the most exciting for us, that as a system we're going to address together. And whether that's mealtime, at lunch with a tray and kindergarten students holding and walking that tray and moving together with gross and fine motor skills and sitting down and practicing social skills. That's one of the great pieces within lunch is going to be great. You got to come by and check this one out. But what's really going to be great is the photo you see of the two students working through that academic work piece. Those opportunities are going to increase, and then you'll notice that opportunity for creative play and that social skills and vocabulary engagement and oral language comprehension, you can see that that's taking place there as well. And so, again, about extending those opportunities, not about repeating those opportunities in West Ada, but being very intentional around our model for full day, knowing that we want to provide that level of flexibility as we do in all West Ada classrooms. Okay? And I would be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for the great presentation. After your presentation and questions, I was going to take a break so that the trustees could kind of think through the interviews and things we saw. But there's a couple trustees, myself included, that maybe need a little personal moment. And so I'm going to take the break now, and then we'll come back and we'll ask the questions. So let's take a break until 7:15. Okay, the Board of Trustees is back from our recess, and we'll continue with the work session part of our agenda. And trustees, I'll open the floor if you have any questions for Mr. Myers. Trustee Ozuna.
Seems like I always have questions. Mr. Myers, I share your excitement about the literacy dollars for all-day kindergarten. I think this is going to be just an amazing thing for our students and our families. Couple of questions for you. With our tuition kindergarten that we have in place right now, how much difference is there in preparation for first grade for those that are in that tuition kindergarten all-day program and those that do half-day? Is there a big difference?
Trustee Ozuna, Chair Trustee Ozuna, yes, and we have data that paints two pictures. Okay, so there's data behind a picture that says it is incredibly beneficial for the transition to first grade, not only through the academic lens, but the social skills lens of that. What we see in those instructional settings is a level of what we talked about with an intentionality around an instructional model for that classroom, where not only is every moment used well, and I'm not to say that it wouldn't be used well outside of that classroom setting, but used well is through a level of like engaging instructional strategies, a focus on priority standards, some tremendous intentionality around oral conversation and language for kindergarten students, because that does demonstrate a need that way. And it does provide more of those opportunities for interactive social play for kids. But the interactive social play and opportunities isn't enough if there isn't a level of planning behind it and some very intentional instructional planning behind it. So in a setting where that instructional model has a level of clarity and planning and intentionality behind it, yes, it's going to set up students for success in first grade. I think what models we want to try to avoid are a repeat of morning and afternoon, so the same thing happening again, just louder. That's not what we want. Nor do we want something that doesn't account for what happens over the course of 6 hours in a child's brain in school developmentally, and how to adjust and adapt for that, and to create that number of transitions and opportunities for extended, like directed play rather than just go play. And that's a very different model. And so that's why bringing in a guiding coalition of our tuition K teachers that demonstrate those outcomes, that's exactly what we're looking for. And a lot of it is going to be us doing our own action research behind it. That's one of the reasons behind the TOSA opportunity, why we're going to spend a tremendous amount of time in kindergarten classrooms looking at kindergarten data, all of which is being used not only to build that guiding coalition to say, where are outcomes greatest in West Ada? What does that model look like? And how can we work together to defining that as the West Ada kindergarten model?
Trustee Ozuna.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chair, I just have one more question. And it's okay if you don't have an answer, but I have gotten some, like we all have, right? Feedback from parents and a lot of questions about this program. And some of them aren't interested in a full day model, and I really appreciate the flexibility that you're putting in place there. Do you have any idea how many parents fall in that camp? And I know it's probably too early to know, but are we talking about large volumes, or is it really, really small numbers that we're looking at there?
Trustee Ozuna, Chair Co-Fellow Trustees, I don't have I don't know that I would have an accurate data set to be able to tell you what that would look like right now. I know we're going to plan for both. I know that the goal is we're going to plan for a full day, knowing that it would be not easier but more beneficial to build toward a full day if a student started at half day rather than go in reverse. Mm-hmm. Not that we can't provide that level of flexibility, we can doing that, but what we want to be able to say is if a parent elects to have their child just attend half of the day, or maybe that 1 o'clock dismissal time is what we would recommend, that the benefit they're getting from that instructional model is still very effective. It's those extended opportunities that they're missing out of, and so that's what we want to build into it and provide opportunities and structures for that. But a lot of that is up to us and our instructional model with that. Some of this is, as a kindergarten parent and the opportunities to do that, I've been there, I was there 4 times, it's nerve-wracking, and you want your child to succeed, and you want them to be the best, and we share that goal, and we want them to be successful too, and trust the knowledge that parents have to say, my child's going to make it till about 2. And that's okay. We want to be able to build that in, but we also know that first grade's coming, and we want to build toward that and the additional opportunities, and and really it has to do with that stamina, that level of stamina to be able to hold on to that until 405. So we're going to work together in all of those possible circumstances.
Can I, one follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, trustee.
And again, I really appreciate the flexibility that you're putting in there for families, and also the passion that you clearly have for this program and these kindergarten students. For those parents that do need the flexibility, are they going to lose midday busing? Is that accurate?
I think we would have some updates for you on transportation and what that's going to look like. As of right now, that does look to be the case. But we'll have some updates for you in regards to transportation on what that's going to look like. Transportation is one part of the Friday committee where we meet every single time. As of this right now, that would be the case. Parents would need to elect to pick up.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Trustee Ozuna and Chair, if I may follow up on just one thing I thought of after I mentioned that. One component behind having a planned meeting with parents and guardians is to allow for that flexibility, but we still want to plan for that child and moving forward. And so, yes, we want to provide that flexibility, but there's still a system involved in place in this, and we want to make sure that we can provide instruction for the number of students we know are going to be with us, say, for example, from 1 o'clock to the end of the school day. And so we want to be able to provide for that. Holding the meeting will also let us meet that student's needs better, because we can not only identify those needs together, but work toward addressing those needs.
I have a quick question. One, I do appreciate, like Trustee Ozuna mentioned, I appreciate the purposeful addressing of the ability for folks to maybe transition out if their child just can't make it that full day initially, and that there's thought going into that. And then also helping that child maybe increase stamina if the parent wants to try to do that, so they'll be ready for first grade. The correspondence that I have had from some patrons have been around that, is they're concerned that their little one maybe can't do that full day, and are they going to miss out? Are they going to have some sort of stigmatism around them? And so I'm glad there's purposeful effort there. Thank you. For me, a quick question is, what if a family decides for their child that, you know what, we're not going to do kindergarten? With it being offered with funding through the state now, is it an optional, or is it a required thing through the education?
Parents can elect not to send their child to kindergarten now, and so that would continue to be the case.
Any other questions for Mr. Myers? As usual, a phenomenal presentation with limited questions, so thank you.
All right, thank you, and we'll continue to have updates for the board and for our guardians, parents
Okay.
and guardians.
Yeah, it's exciting. I just do have one last thing is, if I do come to have lunch with the kindergartners, do I get a mask like that? Because that just makes the food taste better.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move into the action part of our agenda. And this is where the board may choose to take action regarding the nomination for the Zone 2 trustee position. And so I will open the floor if any trustee feels moved to make a nomination. Trustee Redford.
This was really hard. All four were phenomenal, or are phenomenal candidates. And I'm glad that we had this this second round of questions. I would like to nominate Lucas Backlayan for the Zone 2 trustee vacancy. Do I leave it at that, or can I say why?
You can elaborate, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Based on his wide variety of experiences in education as both an administrator and teacher in private versus public and privileged and underprivileged schools, international, Hawaii, here more domestically, and just your diverse background, I think that would bring a lot of insight and expertise to the board. I also just really liked your demeanor. Sometimes when people are really experienced, there comes a sense of authority or something like that. But I felt like you were really
you were coupled it with humility and an understanding of people in a wide variety of different professional positions and backgrounds. So for that reason, that's why I would like to nominate Lucas.
Thank you. Do we have a second for the nomination of Lucas Bacleon for the Zone 2 trustee vacancy?
Nominations don't require a second.
Thank you, clerk. I appreciate that. Okay, so we will open the floor for a vote for Lucas Bacleon as a selection for the Zone 2 trustee. So I'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Frazier.
Yes.
Trustee Ozuna.
Aye.
Trustee Redford.
Aye.
And the chair will support that motion with an aye vote. So the nomination for Mr. Bacleon for the Zone 2 vacancy passes on a 4-0 vote. So congratulations, Mr. Bacleon. Welcome. We look forward to working with you. I would like to, before we close this part out, just make a comment that it's difficult when we put ourselves out there, and I appreciate each one of you. And there are going to be so many opportunities where we're going to need to solicit your support and participation in various committee work or work groups. And I hope to see those that maybe won't be functioning in a trustee position, but helping the district with your expertise, because you each brought a valuable skill set that will benefit this school district. So I hope to see you that, and thank you very much. The swearing in for Mr. Bacleon will occur at our April 11th meeting. So our next item for this agenda is executive session, and so I would entertain a motion to move into executive session. Trustee Frazier.
All right, I left my glasses at home. All right, I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session per Idaho Code 74206 1B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student.
Okay, we have a motion to move into executive session per Idaho Code 74206 1B. And do we have a second? Trustee Redford.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Trustee Ozuna.
Aye.
Trustee Frazier.
Aye.
Trustee Redford.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes 4-0. We will move into executive session. Okay, the board is back from executive session. It is 7:38, and the last item on our agenda is adjournment, so I would entertain a motion. Trustee Redford.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? And we have Trustee Frazier.
Second.
Great, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.